Okay, so when I first came on board with Lifeseasons back in 2016, I assumed this would be something that a woman would need to take, cycle after cycle, maybe for 3 or 4 cycles before she would see a balancing benefit. And so I went around, around the country, connecting with all these health food stores, talking to customers in the aisle. And what I kept hearing was, no, I just take this on the days that I feel PMS. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I can't believe that's really happening, but I have heard it over and over again. And now we have a huge team of customer service reps. And I just met with them today. I think we have 20 folks now on that team, and they hear the same thing, that because of the potency. Do you from your customers?
I do, yeah.
That's so cool to hear. Yeah. So it doesn't even need to be taken every day to get the benefit. That's pretty remarkable.
It is.
You're listening to the Nutrition World Podcast, a show about navigating the intricacies of holistic wellness. We're a natural health food store located in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we believe that optimal health and peak performance should be accessible to everyone. Hey guys, welcome back to the Nutrition World Podcast. My name is Brian Strickland. I'm the producer of the show. And on today's episode, Cady is going to sit down with Sarah Burton. Sarah is the VP of Education and Communication for a company called Lifeseasons. And if you're unfamiliar with them, their whole philosophy is really centered around the fact that nature provides what we need for healing, and then that is backed up with scientific and clinical evidence. They have a ton of great formulations, but today we're going to focus on 2 specific ones, and that is their pre-men's tea formula and their anxiety formula. This one is going to be mostly centered around women's health, but obviously some of the things can be applied to everyone. And we have a ton of information to cover on today's episode, so we hope that you enjoy this conversation with Cady and Sarah Burton.
Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Good to see you, Cady. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Same to you. And so I hope you and your family have been well, and, we're doing a virtual thing here, and that seems to be the way of the world right now. And so, we're just doing what we can with thankful for technology.
Absolutely. What a time for Zoom.
I know. Exactly. So I want to just really hop right into it, because this is a passion of mine. Here at our store, women's health is, I would say, women's and babies are really my focus, and it feels like my calling and passion in life to kind of bring forth and bring to light a lot of issues that females have no idea are even really issues, and don't realize that there's holistic ways, natural ways to help them through these stages and through these symptoms. And so I want to dive into talking about PMS. So I want to talk about those 7 to 10 days before your menstrual cycle that most women at some point in their life, I could imagine, have felt either moody, either short-tempered, cramping, bloating, food allergies, headaches. I mean, the list goes on and on. Wouldn't you say that it's something in your practice that you hear often?
There is a long list of very uncomfortable and life-disrupting symptoms that can start, like you said, 7 to 10 days before the start of the first day of your menstrual flow. And you're absolutely right. So many women walk around with these issues and have no idea that there are options for them. So things like moodiness, cramping, obviously, once the cycle starts, breast tenderness, bloating, breaking out right in this area. In traditional Chinese medicine, this relates to ovaries. And so for a lot of women, they'll get an acne flare-up right here, right before their cycle starts. A lot of digestive disturbance, things like, either constipation and then diarrhea going back and forth, headaches, fatigue, and then food cravings are all very common symptoms of PMS.
And traditionally, most women, what do they do about this? Like, it seems as if they just feel like it's something that they have to deal with, or they have to go grab an over-the-counter, a Midol, a Tylenol, something that's really just suppressing the symptoms, but they aren't aware that maybe there's something else they could do?
No, you nailed it. This was one of the most shocking statistics to me. So 85% of women in the United States have some or all of those symptoms before the start of each menstrual cycle. And 79% of women in the United States buy supplements. But guess how many are buying supplements for themselves for those PMS symptoms? It's only 4%. Only 4% of American women are taking something to help balance their hormones and promote an easier time premenstrually, because we are thinking about our families. We're buying something for our husbands. We're buying something for our kids. Maybe we're buying other things for ourselves and just dealing with it. Like you said, just figuring that there's no other option, or we turn to something like Midol or Excedrin or Tylenol. And quite frankly, there are issues with those over-the-counter drugs. A lot of people think that there's no issue because it's available over the counter. But our chief research officer at Lifeseasons, nurse practitioner Jamie Langston, said liver issues from Tylenol is one of the most major things that they see in her clinical practice. People don't think about the fact that there are long-term liver effects to that, taking that kind of over the counter.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. And I kind of wonder, I'm like, how do people not know that something is wrong when they have these symptoms? Or how do they not know that maybe there's something that needs to have a deeper look? But, I go back to even when I was 18 and 19 and I had some of that acne around my chin, and I would go to the OBGYN, and I still was in this same path of holistic health, but I did enjoy kind of asking and digging a little deeper with the OB and saying, what can I do about this? What can I do about that hormonal acne here? And then what can I do about these? I think at that time it was maybe 5 to 6 days of just kind of real tender emotional moods that would come on, and everything seemed upsetting to me and everything made me weepy, that kind of feeling.
Yes.
And sadly, the only answer was birth control pills. That was the answer that I was told. And I actually did go down that route, and it actually made my PMS 30 days rather than 5 days. So I spent the whole month in a tender emotional state and didn't receive the help that I was looking for.
Unfortunately, it is the go-to for Western trained doctors, right? Is that they are taught, in medical school by the pharmaceutical reps that these, synthetic hormones will lock in and manage your hormones all month long. And what people don't often think about is that being on, cyclical birth control puts you at risk for many different nutrient deficiencies, including all of the B vitamins, which of course are so important to mood and energy levels, right? So we may be further tanking things and throwing things out of balance. They also put us at risks of certain types of cancers and blood clots. And so if the purpose that, a person is taking birth control is not really even about preventing pregnancy, but trying to bring balance to their hormones, those side effects may not be that might not be an okay equation for someone, right? Especially knowing that there are natural alternatives that really can bring actual healing and balance rather than just trying to contain the symptom.
I totally agree. And I think that's a conversation I'll have with my clients and my customers is, why are you on that hormonal birth control pill? Is it actually for birth control reasons? Are you, actually not desiring to have a child right now, and that's just something that you feel led to take? Or is it because you're trying to manage a symptom? And if it's the managing a symptom, it's just, I can't wait to get them educated on the other alternatives and options out there to really feel their best self. One of my favorite psychiatrists, Kelly Brogan, you're probably familiar with her, but she has a book out, Own Yourself, and it's basically about how awful the birth control pills in that industry is for thinking there is a purpose for them. And I'm not going to slander all medications or all birth control. There is a purpose, but it's not the answer for symptoms of PMS. It generally is not the answer. Right. And so she really encourages women to get off of the birth control pills if it's possible for them, and start seeing how they feel within 2 to 3 menstrual cycles, and seeing if that vitality and that mood and whatnot may actually balance back out, or find a natural route, or eat anti-inflammatory foods and start, digging a little bit deeper here. And so I know, as you know, a holistic lifestyle involves a lot of modalities. It's not just a pill. It's not just a food. But what else in a life could kind of balance us out for our PMS? Is there certain foods that you like? Is there certain activities, sleep, guidance, anything you have for females?
Yeah. And so that is the other thing, right? That often we're called to do a little bit more work, and we like the idea that taking a pill every day could fix everything. And unfortunately, that's just not the case, whether it's a supplement pill or a pharmaceutical pill. So, people that I have talked to, women who I have talked to who deal with intense PMS have found that daily activity, moving their body, even as little as 30 minutes of something that's a little bit more high intensity, that really gets their blood pumping and heart racing a little bit, does really mitigate a lot of those PMS symptoms. Enough water is really important as well, because when someone is constipated, the hormones aren't leaving the body as quickly as they should. And when that fecal matter is hanging out in the body long term, those hormones can get reabsorbed into the bloodstream, and then the balance becomes even more imbalanced, really tipping things wildly out of whack, so that we have even more extreme hormonal imbalance. So keeping the bowels moving, having lots of, fresh fruits and veggies, plenty of fiber, plenty of water, to keep things moving along, maybe aloe, some good things to help lubricate, move things along. If there could be some liver issues going on, one indication, on the face, we talked about this for hormonal acne, meaning kind of related to the cycle. This is liver in traditional Chinese medicine. So lines here, breakouts here, are often related to liver. And so if someone knows that they've worked in a situation where they've been exposed to a lot of chemicals, I grew up in central Illinois around a lot of farmland. The ponds we swam in were just probably 50%, pesticides runoff from the farms. Even being somebody at a lot of trade shows or in new construction homes, any place that you're exposed to a lot of sort of like volatile organic compounds, things like that, could be a good idea to help love your liver a little bit, maybe with a regular cleanse or an ongoing, supplement to help support that, so that as the liver breaks apart hormones that are no longer needed in my body, it can dismantle them properly and neutralize them, and then help move them out through the bowel as fast as they should. So that helps keep everything in balance.
Sure. Those are great tips. That's so helpful. So I guess talk to me at this point a little bit about the Pre-Mince Tea formula by Lifeseasons. I know from a couple employees at our store, I know from clients, this has actually changed their life. And I don't say that like on a mild level. There's literally some people that I know that were dreading that 1 week before their period, dreading the weepiness, dreading the bloating, couldn't fit into the clothes that they wanted for that week, literally had a separate like area of their closet they would actually have to pull from for that 1 week of the month because of the intense bloating. So, I mean, those symptoms that are disrupting your daily life and are, causing stress and strain to keep up with the activities that you want to do. What is this formula about, and kind of how was it formulated and why?
Yeah. So Pre-Mince Tea, and you may have a newer label on the shelves at Nutrition World. Pre-Mince Tea is our formulation from Lifeseasons that provides all of the ingredients that have been traditionally used to help bring balance at this time of the month in milligram amounts that are backed by research. So that's really Lifeseasons' claim to fame, is looking at traditional use and science to give the right therapeutic dose so that somebody really does have that life-changing experience. And I never get tired of hearing that. I absolutely love that kind of feedback. And that's something that we get to enjoy a lot working at this company, because those hefty therapeutic doses, most of your viewers are probably going to be too young to remember the commercials that I grew up with, but the Raisin Bran commercials, the son used to put in 2 scoops of raisins. It was so much more raisins than other kinds of cereal. And I always think of that with Lifeseasons, like 2 whole scoops of all the good herbal ingredients, vitamins, minerals, botanicals that have been proven to help with this health challenge, all in those nice hefty doses, so you really can have life-changing effects.
I love that. And I think that's something unique with Lifeseasons that you just touched on, is the fact of the therapeutic dosing. So it's not just a sprinkle of something. It's not something that, that you're going to have to take 6 of to see a difference. They have somehow figured out a way to formulate enough ingredients to hit different ways of helping the body find balance. When I turn it around and like look at it, I mean, we have B vitamins, which are known to help with mental stability and known to help with kind of the handling stress. And then we go into herbs, and then we go into actually anti-inflammatory ginger, and then we go into berries, chasteberry and dong quai, and a Chinese herbal go-to. I mean, there's so many different ingredients, but there's probably such a synergistic effect, I could imagine, between them all, and that's another big component.
That's absolutely right. No, you nailed it. We always look at Lifeseasons, the formulation team has over 150 years of experience formulating in the natural products industry. And one thing I really appreciate, and that I think customers end up appreciating without even knowing it's going on, is that the formulation team sits down and thinks about what is happening in the body of a woman who is having premenstrual syndrome issues, right? And so rather than just trying to mitigate or turn off a particular symptom or even a set of symptoms, they really look at the underlying causes and conditions that have contributed to the point where this person's now at that pain point that they went into the health food store to seek a remedy. And so looking at the underlying issues and then turning to that traditional wisdom about, you know, the different pathways in the body that are involved, the different metabolic processes, like you said, and then putting in those ingredients at the full research-backed dosages, and then the synergistic benefit of taking them all together. Lifeseasons does quite a bit of research. In fact, we're the leader in the industry in funding third-party research, you know, gold standard clinical trials on our finished formulas. And one recently, which happened to be an immune product, it was set up in a very clever way because each individual ingredient was tested for immune response and then as a whole tested in vitro. And there was a 350% increase in activation of the NK cells when all of those ingredients were taken together. And so that was just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We'd like to do further research across all of our formulations, but it gives us a really good indication that taking those botanicals, nutritional ingredients, this, you know, nutraceutical approach really does provide those synergistic benefits that give someone much more than taking one or two or even a couple of these ingredients on their own.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that about the immune system one. That's amazing. I so believe in the synergistic effect. I think that, you know, synergy is found in even the ways that you can combine food. We already know that, and the ways that certain foods can help other foods digest better, and some kind of hinder the digestion of others. And so I think synergy is such a cool concept in our industry. And I know you guys are big on that. So tell me, like, with your clients and with your customers, is this something that you say to take all month long, or is this something that you say to take like the week before?
Okay, so when I first came on board with Lifeseasons back in 2016, I assumed this would be something that a woman would need to take, you know, cycle after cycle, maybe for 3 or 4 cycles before she would see a balancing benefit. And so I went around, you know, around the country, connecting with all these health food stores, talking to customers in the aisle. And what I kept hearing was, no, I just take this on the days that I feel PMS. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I can't believe that's really happening, you know, but I have heard it over and over again. And now we have a huge team of customer service reps. And I just met with them today. I think we have 20 folks now on that team, and they hear the same thing, that because of the potency. Do you? From your customers?
I do, yeah.
That's so cool to hear. Yeah. So it doesn't even need to be taken every day to get the benefit. That's pretty remarkable.
It is. Because honestly, it's funny that you told that story. I did the same thing when we first were introduced to this at our store. I told the customers and clients, I'm like, this is something you have to take daily because it's got to get into the system. It's got to start working.
That's right.
And I would tell them, you know, we're not treating this as if it's a medication, which we're still not treating it as a medication. But I said, we need to use it to really create a shift in the body. Well, then the way things kind of naturally occur, people didn't want to take it all month long and started experimenting to see, could I just take it when I feel bad? And then people were coming back in and telling me that that is what they in fact did. And it was working just great for them. So then my advice changed based upon those anecdotal reviews. So Yeah.
Isn't it so funny? And I'm all in favor of that,
Sure.
right? And so if somebody has really intense issues, right? Like maybe very irregular cycles that are very unpredictable and that causes a lot of issues in their life, they may be motivated to take it all month long, every month, right? To help bring things really into balance. But for somebody who's really only experiencing PMS, 7 to 10 days a month, she may take it just on those days and get all the benefit. And all of us get to a point. I mean, I know Ed is like the ultimate champion of taking supplements. I take a lot and I'm still nowhere close to him, but all of us have our own threshold of where we hit pill fatigue. And so for every customer, I say, absolutely take it when you need it, because then you might be able to take something else on those other days.
Totally.
Maybe you take something for hair, skin, and nails, or for, cognitive function, or for your joints. So maybe it kind of opens up a little room in your supplement routine.
Yeah, totally.
Where you take something else.
I agree. I don't think everyone has the the desire to take as many pills as Ed. So I think it's awesome that he wants to do that. But oftentimes customers come in and their question is how many do I have to take and how often? And so kind of from a place of what can be a little easier for their lifestyle or what cannot throw a huge wrench in their day-to-day, routine. And so this is phenomenal that it doesn't have to throw a big monthly wrench. It can just throw a few days before the cycle, a week before the cycle. Yeah. Yeah. I think that
compliance is easier.
I think so too. And we'll have to see. I've been either pregnant or breastfeeding now for so many years that I haven't had PMS. So once I finish this cycle and season of my life, it may be something that I'll try. So
Yeah. No, it's so fantastic. It's got, like you said, some of those go-to women's herbs, the chasteberry, the dong quai. Like you said, dong quai in traditional Chinese medicine is sort of considered like women's ginseng, or like the women's all-purpose panacea herb. It will kind of do everything. Cramp bark is one of the first herbs that I really fell in love with back when I first started working in a health food store, because it was so experiential. I was just like miserable with menstrual cramps, and one of my coworkers, told me to buy it on my break, and I took the tincture, and it was like angel fingers.
Wow.
Relaxed the uterine contractions that I was like agonizing with. And so I loved that cramp bark is in this formula. It's becoming harder to find as a standalone product. So I love that that's woven in here. The ginger, like you said, for the inflammation that comes along with the tender breasts and, all throughout the body. But also really the digestive disturbances, the gas and bloating, and the kind of, getting your bowels thrown out of whack that happens along with hormonal imbalance. The ginger really helps with that. And the B vitamins, not only for mood, but also healthy brain messaging and hormone production. It's critical. And I think so many of us are stressed. When we're stressed, we burn through a lot of B vitamins, and we may need a lot more. They're water soluble. We may need a lot more. And so that's built right in to sort of support your body in that normal hormone production.
I love that. B vitamins, I feel like, are a catch-22, because it's like your body needs them, but the more stressed you are, the more your body's using them up. And so it's kind of a vicious cycle where they're so important, they're grabbed at by the body. And so that's why we have to replenish them. I'm so big on B vitamins. I can always see a difference in people's adaptability to stress and able to manage stress a little bit better with those once the B vitamins are actually at a good recommended dose.
I agree.
One thing that I happened to talk earlier with a coworker about is, and I want to throw this in just so it's heard, but using organic tampons and organic pads is such a key factor in helping the menstrual cycle pain, maybe even the PMS, because as you probably know, and I'm sure you've kind of advised other people on, is the chemicals within those tampons and pads are just tragic. And that's going straight into the bloodstream through the porous vaginal walls. And so that's just always one little tip I could offer a female in terms of a lifestyle change, is to look for the organic tampons, the organic pads. And when I was doing a little research on this, I didn't realize, but tampons are actually registered as a medical device. And I didn't realize that, but that means that they don't have to be, it doesn't have to be on the label what chemicals were used, what chlorine.
Are used in it.
Yeah. And so just a small little tip for the females that are listening to this is, imagine pairing organic tampons or pads, if that is what the female chooses to use, with the pre-mens tea. And I could imagine some wonderful feeling days, out of that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Well, and I will say from personal experience and from talking to a lot of my friends, even organic tampons for people who are really prone to cramps, some women find that not using tampons really reduces their cramps, especially for someone who gets clotting with your cycle. And so sticking with a pad or even sometimes the reusable absorbent underwear,
I've heard that.
The different period underwear can be really helpful because then you're not inhibiting any of the flow. And so then the kind of the cramping can stop. Yeah. So that's another pro tip.
That's a great tip. I haven't wrapped my mind around the underwear yet, but I think that's a great tip.
They're amazing.
So, are they? Okay.
They are amazing. Yes.
I've heard that from probably 5 or 6 people in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
So
especially overnight, it is a game changer.
Wonderful. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing. So let's move into the other product that, and the other real topic that I kind of want to get to here, because even bigger than PMS and even bigger than us kind of discussing, menstrual symptoms, I honestly think that one of the biggest topics that we get asked about in our store is anxiety. I think that it's so unfortunate. I think people are really plagued with anxiety right now. I think that the pandemic, I think that lifestyle changes, I think even social media, perhaps, I think even reasons maybe we can't exactly know why, but we live in a really anxious culture and world right now. And I hate that. I hope that there's going to be a shift at some point that doesn't keep us all living in this manner and in this way. But for now, I think that we kind of need to touch on, is there relief for people that are feeling anxious? And what does even anxiety feel like? Like, what are the symptoms? And some people aren't even aware that maybe they've been living in an anxious headspace. So
this is one of my favorite topics. This is my very favorite formula from Lifeseasons. Anxiety. Oh my gosh. This one, I am the target market for this. And I think so many people are. So I was one of those people who I did not feel like I resonated with the concept of anxiety at all. And I can remember the first time I went and saw an acupuncturist, she kept bringing up stress and anxiety with me. And I assumed that she was assuming that because of my job as a traveling, salesperson covering 11 states, that she must think I'm really spread thin. And so I kept saying, no, like I really like my job. It's not stressful to me. I'm not stressed. And finally she just kind of stopped me and she said, your body is. Guess what? You know what I mean? And that was a big light bulb moment for me. And I thought that anxiety would look like someone who was too scared to talk, too shy to participate. And I'm like, I have no problem with like dancing in front of a crowd or whatever, I thought it would be someone who was biting their nails, somebody who couldn't sleep at night. Like I had a very narrow idea of what anxiety would look like. And when I saw a list a while later that said, do you go back and revisit the same media, whether book or movie, over and over because it brings you an instant sense of comfort? I was like, wait, what? Because I've done that my whole life. I read the same book twice a year from second grade through the end of high school because it always brought me comfort. The Phantom Toll Booth. It's great. But I go back and watch Pride and Prejudice over and over again. Like I go and I got through college watching the 10 Commandments over and over again. Something about the way Ann Baxter said Moses always made me feel like instantly comforted. And so I was always turning to the same media. And I've talked to friends who are like, oh, I just put The Office on all the time because it just instantly like de-stresses me. Well, that's somebody whose body has been so keyed up with anxiety that they are looking for predictability. They are looking for something that they know exactly how this plot is going to go. And seeing that predictability brings me that sense of like ease and comfort in my body. So scrolling, picking up foods, especially carb heavy and sugar heavy foods, sometimes salt and sugar both act on our stress hormones. So it's kind of it's an attempt to self-medicate when those hormones are just sort of out of control. But yeah, picking up the phone and, texting an ex is a way that some people try to like get some good brain chemistry going, and picking or, habitual sort of behaviors can certainly be. But yeah, it doesn't always look like someone who's too timid to talk, it can look like I'm controlling or, creating a situation that's like a pretty narrow situation that I can be okay in.
I can relate to that. I very much can. My form has always been perfectionism. So the need to kind of have everything work out in a perfect way, or me analyzing my life or my home or my office or this and needing it to work out perfectly. And so I think that kind of fits into your idea of like the control and trying to kind of fit things into a narrow, like schematic kind of situation so that it's comforting to know. And the other idea is the inability to kind of adapt with change. I love to know like this, I can do new things, but I need to know, and I want to know about exactly how to plan and perfect that before. And so that all those things I did not realize either until my, last years and more adult life, I suppose, is a way of trying to manage anxiety, because I'm the same way. I sleep perfect. I've always never been biting my nails. I can talk to people. I don't, it's just, I would dance in front of people too. No problem with that. Like, exactly. And so, but yet that perfectionism and need to like fit into a little box to comfort me has definitely been, something in my life. So I think we can relate.
We're talking about this. I feel like so many people and so many women need to hear this message, right? That need to control the outside in an attempt to change how I'm feeling inside is a very common thing that I think we women go to. So one thing that you touched on there that's such a perfect segue into talking about how this formula works is that sort of the need to know how things are going to go so I can kind of anticipate and predict. That can be indicative that our vagus nerve is not well toned. And so the vagus nerve, for years, we've kind of heard like the mind-body connection, the brain-gut connection. The vagus nerve is the literal brain-gut connection, and it kind of wanders all over the body. So it's vagus as in vagrant, wandering all over the body. But when the vagus nerve is really well toned, our body can move in and out of fight or flight and rest and digest with ease. Because as a human, like an adaptable, well-balanced, healthy human, I do need to be able to move into fight or flight very quickly. Sometimes someone swerves and cuts me off in traffic. There's an emergency situation. I need to react, right? I need to maybe run and evade from a predator, in prehistoric times. So it is important to be able to quickly move into fight or flight, but it is just as important to quickly move back out when the threat has passed. And so a poorly toned vagus nerve means I hang out in that jittery fight or flight state well beyond when the emergency situation has passed. And the longer I'm there and the more stress hormones I'm pumping out, the more inflammation that is being produced throughout my body, the more of a number it's doing on my mental state, my gut health, everything. Same thing, I need to be able to move into rest and digest when it's time to eat. So a lot of people with high stress also develop digestive issues because they're not able to move out of fight or flight into rest and digest. And then a lot of people with a lot of stress can't turn off at night to get into the sleep state. So a well-toned vagus nerve helps us be flexible and adaptable literally within our body. And the vagus nerve, it turns out one of the most important nutrients for it, neurochemicals, is GABA. And there is not only GABA in anxiety, but almost every ingredient also enhances how the body produces or utilizes GABA. So this whole thing is food for your vagus nerve. So it helps you kind of be more resilient. And GABA also pumps the brakes on that mental chatter, that perfectionist thinking, that cyclical thinking, the list making past the point where it's helpful, the review of the day past the point where it's helpful, laying in bed at night thinking that embarrassing thing that happened in Sister Margaret Murphy's class in 3rd grade. Like it just quiets all of that. And so I can be useful and actually move forward into my day.
That was a beautiful description. That makes perfect. It really was. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I think that the vagus nerve is something that in the last probably 2-3 years keeps coming up into my life. So different symposiums I've been to, different podcasts, just different research about the vagus nerve and its role in our health and the way you described it. And, what comes to my mind is like, why are we not able to, why are our vagus nerves so stressed out and why are they not able to jump a little more fluidly back and forth? Why can't we go between fight and flight and back to rest and digest? What do you think? Do you have a thought on why that is?
I have a few thoughts, and there are certainly experts more well-versed in this than I am who have put a lot more time and effort into the research of this. But I think just having constant small panics throughout the day, things like social media, honestly, just those little surges constantly, I feel like probably isn't helpful. And then we also, I think, don't do a lot of the things that nourish and help. So I think that you guys at your store are also into a lot of the things that turn out to be beneficial, like hot and cold exposure therapy turns out to be really tonifying for the vagus nerve. So some of these really old traditional human practices that cross a lot of cultures, I love finding out that, oh, look at this unifying factor is they all benefit the vagus nerve. So kind of going from like a hot sauna into an icy bath and back into the hot sauna, or hot tub, cold plunge, hot tub. So that's really tonifying. Even you can just do it with your shower, a nice hot shower, and then at the end, turn it cold. One thing that is so joy promoting to me is that singing tonifies the vagus nerve, humming, deep gargling, anything that's sort of causing a vibration of the vocal cords actually is tonifying to the vagus nerve. So I feel like that's part of like that beautiful high that you can get if you're like singing your heart out, with your family in the car or at your place of worship or wherever, where you're just really singing from the gut. It's tonifying your vagus nerve. Isn't that cool to find out?
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah. That's so neat. It's so cool sometimes how I think maybe we don't know the reason we do something, but there's a reason behind it. And I've oftentimes caught myself, and my husband's pointed out, that I'll hum in like maybe a little bit of a nervous situation. And so he started picking up on, are you nervous in this situation? And I'm like, I mean, not really, but then actually a little bit, and so my natural response was kind of my body, I was humming.
Look at that. Yeah. That gives me chills. I know. Have that instinctual wisdom. That is so cool.
I love that. I know. And so sometimes I think if we kind of remove our thinking and our talking brain, our bodies almost may naturally know a little bit more what to do, but we've disconnected ourselves a little bit from that intuitive living, perhaps because we're in the age of information where we can quickly find an answer on Google or as you mentioned, social media, that constant dopamine surge that can go on with the addiction of the likes and the dislikes and the scrolling and the new thing every second flashing in front of our face.
Absolutely. And I feel like I'm getting news. I feel like I'm informing myself. Maybe I'm keeping up on political issues that are important to me, right? So there is that false sense that this is something important or good to do, but the algorithm is all designed to get me to spend money. I spend more money when I'm stressed, and I've absolutely watched, when there was like, big upheavals in the country, and I'm scrolling through like news story after news story, and then an ad would pop up like, do you like these shiny earrings? I was like, yes, add to cart. Do you know what I mean? And that was like a stress response. That was me looking for that dopamine hit. So I think a social media fast is probably good for everybody. And also I think our culture right now is so hyped on multitasking, that I can be listening to a podcast about nutrition as I'm making my kids lunch, as I'm, sweeping. And I feel like I'm maximizing my time, but really my brain is never getting a pause or any quiet. And so I think taking time maybe for meditation, or just some quiet is probably really critical.
I think people would be surprised how few minutes they would be able to sit in quiet. I know for me, when I first started doing that, I thought, I can do that. And by 2 minutes, I'm like, oh, can I get up? Can I go do something? I need to make this list that's very important. And so stretching your mind or stretching your whole body and soul and allowing yourself to sit and allowing those feelings to come up, but not act on them, not go write the list, but actually stay seated is a good challenge, I think, for the mental state. And so I guess with anxiety, my question would be like, how do you suggest people taking it? Again, is it if they're really in that state where they've been viciously anxious for years and years and years, do they take it all the time or do they take it as needed?
So once I took this formula, I would not want to not take it because of the way I feel. When I took it from the very first day, actually, this is one of my most profound experiences with a supplement ever. I took it and I had just started with Lifeseasons. So I had a whole new account list, a whole new sales territory, all new products to learn. And in spite of all that, I was driving in my car and I was like, man, I feel really okay. Like I feel the absence of worry or stress. I feel right now like I just finished a great yoga class or just had a massage. I feel so centered in my body and clear about what else I should do today. There was no racing thought, no, thready heartbeat or sweaty palms. All of that was gone. And I realized it had been 20 minutes since I took my very first serving of anxiety.
Wow.
And I fell in love. And it turned out I talked to one of the formulators who's a nutritional biochemist. And he said, do you know why that happened? Well, the whole formula obviously is working, but there is a 2-to-1 ratio of L-theanine to kava in this formula. And in a small clinical study, that particular ratio, so L-theanine is the amino acid-like compound that's found in green tea and especially in matcha tea. It's the compound that helps get our brain into that nice, healthy alpha rolling brain wave. And it's also the state that our brain gets into after meditation, right? So that L-theanine helps with that. So that's very calming. And then kava is very calming, right? Can be used almost for like sedative effects. But something interesting happens, and this is where herbs sort of get into alchemy, is that 2-to-1 ratio of L-theanine to kava, instead of being doubly sedating or doubly relaxing, it actually produces a slightly different effect in that combination where it brightens brain energy and brings that feeling of like still calm in the midst of a storm. And I think that's what we've all been looking for as we've tried to like control and manage everything around us. We want that calm feeling inside, and that ratio of those two nutrients does that.
Wow. I had no idea about that.
I love this formula.
That is amazing. I'm going to have to the staff may know this already, but I'm going to be training on that, and I will be sharing this with more people. That's phenomenal. I know a lot of times we have trouble sourcing kava in our store from a standpoint of safety and efficacy and all of that. And so going back to Lifeseasons and its manufacturing practices, I know when we get something in from you guys that I can trust that. And so I think that's such a beautiful thing to know that this really unique herb, pairing it with L-theanine, of which I had no idea about that small study, and then knowing that it is a trustworthy source of the kava and that y'all are doing all the testing behind it. And I've taken kava maybe 2 or 3 times in my life, and it was a powder form and my tongue went numb. I don't know if you've ever taken, my tongue was numb and I'm like, I'm like, is this supposed to happen? And I can't say, I think I took a little too much, and I can't say it was the perfect remedy for me, but knowing that when it's paired with the L-theanine, that's really, really cool. So
no, I'm the same way. It is such a fascinating thing, that alchemy of the herbs, because I don't really care for kava on its own. GABA by itself, I don't feel great when I take just GABA by itself, but this combination of ingredients makes me feel exactly like what I was looking for, because other stress formulas I had tried, many stress formulas are like a stress B complex that sort of amps you up. And if you're already a little thready and like over wired, that's not a great feeling. It doesn't feel like it solves the stress problem. It's maybe putting back nutrients you're burning through, but it doesn't make me feel better in that moment. So they either made me feel like that, or they were so sedative that maybe they had skullcap or valerian for during the day. I felt like I was stoned, and I would just be like, you can do whatever you want. I don't know, So for me, this makes me feel like I know exactly what to do next, and I am already capable. What was I worried about?
Wow. I know what I'm going to be trying once I'm done breastfeeding.
I know.
That's phenomenal. Wow.
So the great thing about it is you can take it in the morning. You can take it at noon. You can take it at night. It's a 2-a-day serving. You can put that wherever you feel your peak of stress. I was always doing mine in the mornings. I do like it for a work day. It really does help me feel in my body and centered and clear about, without the mental chatter, without the sort of like, if you give a mouse a cookie, like hyper, scattered focus. But when my daughter was in kindergarten, we started having clashes when my husband would bring her home from school at the end of the day. I, kind of put your coat away, hang your backpack up. And he pointed out that those fights were starting on my side of the street. And so I started taking my anxiety 20 minutes before they got home. And I'd be like, hey, honey, how was your day?
Yeah. What wonderful wisdom, though, to be able to step back and see it was on your side. Because I do know now with having a toddler, they can sense what the mom is feeling. And so if you're coming at it from a tense place, she probably had her tense self coming.
She was picking up on it.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, luckily, good husband who was like,
yeah. Let's step back and analyze that. And then thankful for anxiety to come in and bring some calm.
Made a huge difference. But I also know a lot of people who feel like they don't relate to what you and I are talking about through the day until the moment their head hits the pillow. And I've had a couple of people say it's like all the browser tabs open back up in their brain, and that's when it gets very loud. So those people like anxiety at bedtime, but it's not sedative, but it'll quiet that mental chatter.
Sure. Okay. Wow. I'm absolutely blown away. So thank you for those descriptions on the anxiety and I think that covered everything, honestly, for me with Lifeseasons and with these two formulas. And I just feel so grateful we've had the opportunity to chat and to just have this conversation. And, it'd be wonderful to see you again in person. But I'm so jazzed that we have these formulas to offer to people and really help them live their absolute best life.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to talk to you again on some other product topics, maybe.
Yeah, I'd love that.
This was a lot of fun.
This was. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye. Talk to you soon.